Mm-hmm. Hey, beautiful people, my becomers. I hope everybody is doing great. In fact, I hope you're doing extraordinary today. I don't know how the weather is in your area, but it is absolutely gorgeous today. It actually feels like a spring day almost. Um, my husband had windows open, so that tells you a lot. Sun is shining and all that beautiful stuff. But wanted to come on today because in my coaching, the one thing that I hear more often than not is this statement that I really want us to think about before we say it. And it is time heals all wounds. I have spoken about this before, but I think it's worth talking about again because we're right on the cusp of spring where new life, rebirth, all of these great things are going to be happening or are actually happening. If you look around, you start seeing things already changing. The days are longer. We're starting to get these changes in temperatures. Our temperatures are a lot milder and so forth. Here's the thing. If we're looking at time healing all wounds, I want us to ask the person who is still grieving the loss of a loved one, the loss of a child, the loss of a marriage, the loss of a business, someone who is dealing with trauma due to molestation as a child or neglect, abandonment as a child. Ask the person who is dealing with being abandoned by their spouse, the traumatic experience, if time actually healed, and that's the key word, healed their wounds. Time does not heal wounds. It does not heal the emotional, the physical, the mental wounds that are left behind because of traumatic event. And let me explain what I mean by a traumatic event. A traumatic event is an event that happened to you, but more importantly, how you experience that event. So a traumatic event could be being in a serious car accident. I know many people who will not ride in the front seat of a car or will not drive because they were in a traumatic car accident. A traumatic event for you could be a pillow being placed over your head and you thought you were going to die. And now you're claustrophobic or you can't stand being closed in. That is a traumatic event. So a traumatic event does not have to be living through war. Living during this pandemic is pretty much traumatic for a lot of people. We've got 500,000 Americans who have lost their lives, which means 500,000 families have been affected, which means there is trauma to go around in those 500,000 families, okay? So let's be clear about what trauma is. And I want to say something else about trauma because trauma could be how you are being treated at your job. Trauma could be what someone said or did not say in your defense. So trauma is what you experienced, not so much what happened to you, but what you experienced and how you process that happening to you. Okay. What time does for wounds is it minimizes the pain, but it doesn't take away the pain. Let me say that again. It minimizes the pain, but it does not take away the pain. Okay. So time will actually cause us to become numb in some cases. Time will make us pretend that everything is okay. Time will make us bitter as well, especially if you're the type of person who ruminates on those thoughts and cannot get out of your head and your feelings. It also can keep us stuck in the blame game and playing the victim for far too long if we're not careful. Okay. Also, if we're not careful, time will cause us to shut off our emotions and our feelings, because what we don't feel, we are not focusing on healing. What we don't feel, we do not focus on healing. If you don't allow yourself to feel certain things, you don't know what needs to be changed. You don't know where you need to start making tweaks in your life so that you can improve the quality of your life. For example, if you don't allow yourself to get close to someone or them to get close to you, you don't get the opportunity to know what true love may be. You may not get the opportunity to know what true friendship will be if you keep up guards because you have not healed from an event that caused you to be distrustful of love and friendships. So I hope that makes sense to you. Because here's the thing, our feelings, they are indicators to us of what's missing in our lives. For instance, if you're lonely, it tells us that we need connection, companionship. If we're hurting, not physically, but let's talk about it from a physically. If we are hurting and do not allow ourselves to feel or tell ourselves that it's not that bad, we may not go get the necessary care to stop the pain. Now, from an emotional perspective, if we are hurting, we need comfort. But if we are shutting down our feelings, we may not reach out to the people that can give us that comfort. If we're sad, it may tell us that we need to mourn losses in our life. Fear tells us that we need support and ways that can help us to courageously face a situation. It can also tell us that we need to make changes in our life so that we feel safe and secure. That's the first thing about time. It can numb us. It can cause us to suppress emotions and feelings, which are very important. The second thing about time not healing our wounds and waiting is that just like physically, when we get an injury, it can leave a scar. When we are not actively doing the work to heal emotionally, mentally, physically from a traumatic injury or wound, those wounds can hurt us way more than a physical wound can, because it's something that is continuous. A physical wound, once we go get the care for that wound, whether it's Neosporin, hydrogen peroxide, washing it off with soap and water, we can minimize future injury to that wound, right? We can minimize infection, we can minimize redness that's associated with it, and other things that can make the wound more problematic for us. The problem with us not getting the healing and not doing the inner work to heal from emotional wounds or physiological and psychological wounds is that we stay stuck. We're just like a hamster on a wheel, just to keep going and going and going. We never get off that wheel and we're just stuck. So we never get to get to a place where we really have a scar that is from a healed wound. So it's pretty much still open and needing treatment. Okay. As with a physical wound, it depends on the type of wound and the severity of the wound, the type of care it's going to get, right? If we're not paying attention to those emotional wounds from trauma, we haven't delved in enough to know what type of care is needed, how long we're going to need care, and what is necessary for the care to be healed, because we haven't dug deep enough. So we're just coasting along in life, and that's dangerous, very dangerous, because what happens is we end up with shoulda, coulda, wouldas because we never did the healing. If you watch the story Bridgerton, and I can't think of the character. What is his name? But Daphne and, oh gosh, I can't think of his name. But here's the thing. He had not healed from his childhood trauma, from his daddy issues. And he was adamant that he was never going to bring forth children. And he was adamant that he was going to do whatever it took to keep that promise that he made to his father on his father's deathbed, not to hurt his father, but he did not realize that he was actually hurting himself. He didn't think he was hurting himself because he didn't realize that he even wanted to have children, because he had closed that part of himself off. You see how dangerous that is? Not only was it dangerous for him, but he was willing to even take someone else down that road of not having the privilege of having children, having a legacy. That's deep, okay? So not only do your wounds not heal, but because your wounds aren't being healed, you're not doing the work to heal, you are hurting other people, whether consciously or unconsciously. Okay, so let's talk about some ways that we can heal from our past. And I really hope that you will give this some serious thought, especially if you are waiting for the pain to subside, to think. If you're waiting and equating the pain to subside to equal healing, that's not the same. Just because the pain goes away does not mean that you are healed. Okay? Even if it was a physical scar, just because the pain goes away and the wound is actually physically healed, the trauma that you experience as a result of getting that scar still needs to be dealt with. Because remember, what you refuse to feel cannot be healed. Okay? So 6 ways that you can work towards healing those traumatic wounds. And those wounds, again, can be a number of things, but we're not going to go back to it. We're going to talk about these 6 ways. The first way, and this is probably it's not the toughest, but it can be tough, is owning your part in what happened to you, if you had part in it. Not everything that happened to you has anything to do with you, with anything you did. If you are a victim of childhood trauma, rape, molestation, neglect, abandonment, has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the other person. Those were choices that they made. And more than likely, those choices were made out of unhealed trauma from their life as well. But I digress. I'm going to give you an example about myself. I am a survivor and an overcomer of domestic violence. Okay. I had to accept my part in what happened to me because I had a choice in the matter. Yes, I had a choice. I could have left my marriage. And before I got married, because that's when the abuse started, I could have left the relationship. I made a conscious decision to stay in that relationship, in my marriage, despite the abuse that I was receiving. So I had to accept my mess and turn it into a message, a testimony. But I did have to accept what my part was. Now, what you do not accept is that it was okay for them to harm you in any way because you didn't have dinner cooked when they felt that it was supposed to be ready, because you didn't dress the way they felt that you should be dressed. No, 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 no. That's not the type of acceptance that I am speaking of. I am talking about the choice you make to stay in situations that cause you trauma, that have wounded you. Okay? Totally different. Totally different. When you can learn to accept your part in it, then you have decided that you know better so you can do better. Okay. That's one of the quotes that I love from Maya Angelou because it's so true. And I know that I accepted my part because at that time, I didn't know better. I believed that I should stick with my husband and love him through his mess. But sometimes love is not enough. And I also had to learn that I am only capable of changing me. I could not change him. So in accepting my culpability in what happened to me, I was able to learn some valuable life lessons that I will take through the rest of my life. And I also share with my clients. Okay. So that's part of it, because we don't want to make those same mistakes going forward. The second thing that I had to learn and that I teach my clients is we have to practice active forgiveness. And that not only is forgiving the other party for what they did to you, but yourself for what you were not able to do for yourself because you didn't know better. You can't do better until you know better, right? So you have to forgive yourself as well and release the other person. That does not, and I repeat, that does not let them off the hook for what they did. It does not. What it simply does is it allows you to free up that negative energy for positive energy so that the Lord can bless you with prosperity, abundance, peace, joy, fulfillment. Okay? That's what that is about. It opens the door to your piece of happiness. Okay? It opens the door to your peace, your blessings. Because when you are walking around with unforgiveness for yourself and even others, God can't bless no mess. And he does not bless us when we are walking around with unforgiveness, right? So we have to be willing to forgive ourselves and other people. Okay? This next one is also a little difficult for people as well, but it's something that is very, very helpful. And that is expressing your pain and making the conscious choice to let it go. Now, remember, pain, release of pain does not equal healing, but it is part of the process of healing. Okay. And the way that you do that is You have the ability to write letters. You can choose to mail the letter or you can hold on to the letter. It is really up to you. You have to decide how that relationship will go if you write that letter. So I am encouraging you that if you decide to write a letter to your perpetrators, the persons that harmed you, whomever it may be, remember that you have to be prepared for the consequences of what may happen. Okay. It could be the end of a relationship. It could be a number of different things, but you have to be consciously prepared for that. So, what I encourage my clients to do is to write the letter or journal about it, whichever is easier. Same difference. It's writing therapy. Okay. And get the thoughts up and out so that they have less power over you. You may have one page, you may have 50 pages. Doesn't matter. Just express it. Start to sit in those emotions and those feelings so you can get it up and out. If you do not feel that you can do that, maybe there's a trusted confidant that you can talk to. I would prefer, however, that if you're going to speak to someone about this traumatic event, this pain, the hurt that you are still enduring, that it be a therapist or a coach or both, because there are tools that they can provide you with that can help you cope and also help you to master your mindset and empower you in ways that you may not be able to get from someone who is a confident or a good friend. Okay. That's the only reason why I would say that. The fourth thing, and this goes back to working with your mindset, is stop picking at the scab. Y'all, I had a little cut and it was bothering the crap out of me. And of course, I was picking at it. That's what I mean. Stop picking at the scab. It had the scab because it was healing over and it was doing its thing. When I say stop picking at the scab, when I'm talking about these wounds that still have yet to heal, I'm talking about the ruminating on them, the constantly thinking about them, living them out over and over again in your mind. Here's why that happens, though. It happens because of emotional triggers. Emotional triggers can be a person, a place, a thing, an circumstance. It can be a scent. It can be a sound. It could be a number of different things that can trigger you to think about that traumatic event that starts your mind to going and going and going. And the reason why your mind continues to ruminate with that emotional trigger is because you haven't, one, dealt with those triggers, dealt with the healing, and dealt with getting to the root cause of why you are still ruminating on that particular traumatic experience that happened to you. And you haven't processed the feelings and the emotions and even the thoughts behind what happened to you and how you experienced it. Okay. It's a conscious effort to be mindful of your thoughts. Remember, the Bible tells us that we should take every thought captive. And the reason why we have to do that is because if we don't take our thoughts captive, they will send us messages that can sabotage us because we're not being mindful of what we are thinking. So that is how we are picking at the scar and reinfecting the wound over and over, or as other people would say, pouring salt into the wound. Okay. The fifth thing is give yourself permission to grieve. Many of us have not had the opportunity to grieve. And I'm speaking from a Black woman's perspective. A lot of times I have not had the permission to grieve because society has told me that my feelings, my emotions don't matter. And that I'm supposed to be this strong Black woman that can just keep taking junk and just keep taking it and taking it and taking it and taking it. That's not true. That is a self-imposed societal limiting belief to keep us stuck. keep us in a place of emotional bondage. It is deeply rooted in systemic oppression and racism and white supremacy and colonization. So that is one thing we have to do is we have to finally give ourselves the permission to grieve because we have lost, whether it's love, whether it's a family member, whether it's a relationship, trust, whatever it may be, we have the right to grieve and we need to give ourselves permission to do so. Here's the part about the grieving process. Some of us actually have been in it, but didn't know it because some of us deny what happened. And some of us, once we get past the denial, we go straight to anger and we forget about the other three parts. Or we've actually had some of the parts, but didn't know that we were supposed to get to the end game, which is acceptance. And some of us still haven't gotten there. So the 5 parts of grieving are denial, anger, bargaining. Y'all know, God, if you would just please do this, I'll do this. Bargaining, depression, and then finally, acceptance. Now, some of us are going to gravitate between all 5 of those. But once we get to that final stage of acceptance, typically we don't go back to the denial and the anger and the bargaining. We may go back into depression just for a tiny bit because there's still healing to be done. And healing is a work in progress. It is something that we will be doing for the rest of our lives in most cases because there's always something that's going on that could be traumatic. We would have never thought we would be living through a pandemic and would be socially distancing for a little over, a year now? Or going on a year, something like that. So definitely, but give yourself permission to grieve. You lost something. You lost something. You deserve the ability to agree to grieve. And the last thing is open your mouth, sis, and ask for help. Some wounds are just way too heavy. Some wounds are too deep. Some wounds need intensive care. Some wounds need a specialist to help you heal from those wounds. Ask for the help. I've always taught my kids, and I tell my clients this as well, the ultimate sign of maturity is knowing when to ask for help and then opening your mouth to do so. That is bravery. That is courageous. And that is you showing love to yourself when you ask for help, when you know you can't do it yourself. What does help look like? Help could look like a therapist. Help could look like a coach. Again, help could look like combining the work of a therapist and a coach together. I have clients that have both therapists and coaches. I have clients that have therapists that tell me things that they have never told their therapist. They are getting breakthroughs that they did not get with their therapist. And it's the quality of the questions that I ask, but it's also the fact that I am transparent and I'm vulnerable and I hold that space. And I'm not saying that the therapists do not hold that space, but I am saying that sometimes we are not paired with the right therapist to be able to hold the space for us that we need to be held. That's what I'm saying. But ask for the help. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you are in a place where you are ready to do the inner work, and I'm going to say it and call it just what it is, to do the intense, hard inner work. You can do hard. You've done hard. Waiting for your wounds to heal is hard. So if you can do that kind of hard, you can do focused, conscientious hard to do the healing and to get you the healing that you deserve so that you can live a more fulfilling life, so that you can create the life that you want and deserve. We all deserve that. I would love to support you. This is what I do for my clients. So if you would like to work with me, please certainly hit the link in the description box and schedule a call with me. And let's talk and let's determine if we are a good fit for each other. I would love to be able to hold that space for you. And if I'm not that person for you, just get the help. That's what this is about, providing you with some tools, some tips so that you can, one, recognize what you're doing. Two, understand why you're doing it, why it's not working. And third, share some ways with you that can help you start the healing process and your self discovery journey, because through this process, you're going to learn so much about yourself. Again, I hope this has been helpful. It's Coach Tracy with Planet to Flourish. If this has been helpful, please do share with your tribe. Sharing is caring. It is also loving to others as well. And last but not least, continue to plant the seeds in your life that are going to help you to grow, thrive, and flourish, because we, the world, we need your gifts, my sister. Thanks so much, and I will see you the next time. Peace and love.